Hello guys, welcome to another tutorial. This time we are going to learn how to do kind of procedurally generated-ish swords like these that you can see here. So yeah, some of them are pretty weird, but it does generate some interesting ones from times to times. And it's no big deal, it's just a set of parameters randomized that give you these kinds of swords and daggers and whatever. Sometimes there's a katana there somewhere, sometimes there's some really weird stuff, but it might be interesting for a game where you might want to generate some weapons procedurally. And you could extend this to have, I don't know, different materials, different colors, even different shapes. The ones I'm using are pretty simple, but you get the idea. So let's see how I accomplish this. So let me just get rid of this really quick here. Here we are. And I'm starting with a scene that already has some things in it. Namely, there's a really simple light setup with 3 lights with slightly different colors. And there's already this test mesh here, which I shaded with the shader I did on the Endless Runner tutorial. You can see the link up there. I'm gonna leave it or in the description maybe. And I also created this sword blade material here, which is just basically a metallic, highly metallic kind of material. So we can use that on our sword, but like I said, you can use whatever you want. So let's get started. Oh yeah, another thing. So I kind of stole these scripts from a guy called Giacomo Lorenz, the camera scripts. It's a pretty cool script. It includes a nice GUI that you can use for, especially for debugging purposes. It allows you to pivot the camera to a certain object in the scene. Like if you press escape here, you have all these options that you can use to control your camera. And it just, instead of rewriting everything from scratch, reinventing the wheel, I just borrowed these scripts from him. It's a MIT license, so you can pretty much do whatever you want, but I think it's always nice to, reference the source of whoever comes up with these things. Yeah, so let's get started. I'm gonna get rid of this, and let's see, I'm gonna create a new spatial here to hold our sword. I'm just gonna name it sword here, and I will want it to have some code, but yeah, sure, why not? So let's just create a script here, attach a script to this. Let's call it swords. And what do I want this script to do? So this script is going to keep a reference to the weapon parts. So we're going to design the sword in 3 parts: the blade, the guard, and the handle. So let's start with the blade. I'm going to have an on-ready var here called blades, and it's going to be of type sword blade. This is a custom class that I'm going to create. And it's going to reference an object that I'm going to create in a second called sword blade. And then let's see, on func ready, I want, and this is just going to be a void return type, and I want to regenerate. And the reason I'm actually using regenerate is because I'm gonna want to press space and be able to generate new swords every time I press it. So that's why I'm doing it like this. I generated the first time, and then on input, with an event, input event here, and return voids. I'm just getting used to adding types to my Godot scripts. I think it just makes it clearer and less error prone for things to go wrong. So we are going to regenerate. If the key or the action regenerate is triggered, we are going to regenerate. And now let's write the function regenerate itself. And this is going to be really simple. It's just going to be blade.build. So we delegate the process of rebuilding itself to the blade. So it's complaining that it doesn't have the sword blade. Let's create it. add child nodes, and this is going to be a mesh instance. I'm just going to parent it to here, and I'm going to call it sword blades. I'm going to attach a new script to it, and hopefully this script doesn't complain anymore, or maybe it does if I made a mistake somewhere. Okay, it's the type. I haven't created the type on this script yet. Let's do that. So if I just declare this to be a class, then it shouldn't complain anymore. I hope. Yes. Okay, cool. So let's get rid of this. And I want this to have a material. Simple material. And now I'm going to create some defaults. I'm just going to copy them in. But I will explain them right now. So age is basically the height of the blade. The tip is from the top of the blade until the tip. So this is going to be like a triangular kind of top sword, as most swords are. But it can be 0 as well, so it can be completely flat, like a flat katana or something like that. Then WU, and WD are basically the width of the blade from the front side. So the width on the upper part and the width on the down part, so up down. And the D is the depth of the sword. So from top you can see the depth, also on the up part and the down part. So there's a lot of variation on the format of the blade this way. Hopefully you don't find my drawings really bad, but I think you can more or less get the gist of it. Also, like the sword guard is going to follow for a similar format, but it's just going to be like a straight kind of rectangular cube-ish thing, just completely flat with some height and some depth as well, and some width. And then the sword handle is just going to be something. It's just going to be like a kind of a cube, extruded cube, if you will, with width and a certain height. The sword itself is going to be drawn from 0, like from Y0 upwards, and then the guard is going to be drawn downwards from 0, and the handle is going to be drawn from the bottom of the guard, which means that the sword script is going to control basically it's going to tell like the guard, so start building from here, and then the handle start building from here on the y-axis. But this will become clearer later on. So now we need some ranges to generate some diversity on our weapons. So I just found these values to be interesting. You feel free to change them. I'm going to post this code. I'm going to post a link to this code in the description, so feel free to play around with it. Next up, we need a random generator to come up with variations of the defaults that we have. And now we need an init function for this class, which is just going to call, in this case, randomize on the random number generator. Then we need to implement our build function that we're going to call from the sword script. And this is going to do two things: set up parameters, which is going to be responsible for setting up. It's mostly for generating the random numbers, and then we do a build mesh to actually use those numbers to generate the blade. So I'm just going to copy this in. This is pretty much randomization of the defaults with some restrictions, namely one of them, like the depth. On the upper side, I want it to always be less than the depth on the downside, just so the blade kind of is always like a pyramid shaped on the depth size, if that makes sense, on the z-axis. Because I thought it would be weird to have like a sword that is kind of more like larger on the top side than on the bottom. That would be probably weird, so I added this restriction. But yeah, you can do these sorts of things as well if you want. And now we're going to do a build mesh. And this is basically the gist of it. And if you followed my previous tutorial on endless terrain, I'm going to post a link for it as well. you know that we're going to use the surface tool. And I am just going to post the vertices that I'm using for the generation of the sword here. But basically, yeah, these are basically the contours of the blade, if you will. And then there's a bunch of indices that declare where the triangles are being built based on these points. And then finally, we just need to take all this information and basically create our mesh. So we are going to draw using triangles. We need to do a set material using the material that is passed in for this blade. And then we basically iterate on the vertices. And I have a small helper function on the globals called draw vertex, just so we see where the vertex is being drawn. And we add this to the surface tool. And then we need to go through all of the indices as well and add those indices in. Oh. And then we need to ask the surface tool to generate the normals. And we might as well ask it to generate the tangents as well. And then we do self.mesh, because this is a mesh instance, this class. We just do self.mesh equals surface tool.commit. And finally, because we also want to have some collision on this, we do self.mesh.create convex shape. And this basically generates a nice collision for us. And I seem to have an error here. I think this is this column here. And global isn't declared in the current scope. I probably have something wrong here. Oh, I seem to... Oh, globals. Sorry. My bad. st dot... Oh, lots of errors today. Huh. I just can't seem to type. So I think if we run this now, we should have a blade. And we do. And if we press space, we can generate some variation. One thing I noticed is that on my sword blade, I don't have a material yet, so I'm just going to drag the sword material in. And one other thing that I did before I started recording was set up the input map, the regenerate. I just added a new entry to the input map and I assigned space to it. So when I press space, it actually triggers the regenerate action. And hopefully this way, yeah, we have kind of a metallic blade, if you will. So yeah, this is cool. And now we just need to generate the guard as well and the handle. And those are going to be pretty much copy paste of this one. So I'm just going to, you know, duplicate this, which is much easier. So this is going to be sword guards. And I need a different script for this. So I'm going to clear script and attach a new script called sword guard. And I'm going to copy pretty much this part here, I guess. This is going to be sword guard, and we need to go back to our sword script and basically duplicate this sword guard, guard, and guard.build. So in this case, I want to do something slightly different here. I think I need to pass in, because I want always I want the guard to always be thicker and wider than the blade, because it would be weird to have a smaller guard than the size of the base of the blade. So I need to pass in to the guard, I need to pass the blade.wd, the width on the down part, and also the blade.dd, the depth on the down part of the blade. And this way the guard can, you know, have minimum sizes to adjust to the size of the blade itself. Which means that the guards, and I'm just going to post here the defaults and the ranges and the init function, and we start writing the build function from then. So the guard has a width, height, and depth, like I mentioned in the previous in the explanation in the beginning. There's a bunch of ranges, there's a random number generator, and we need our build function to have the setup and the build mesh as well, but in this case it accepts the couple of parameters that will restrict the randomization of the values. And so the setup parameters will look something like this. It will do a max between the size of the base of the blades and the value that it generates, and that's the value it uses. So that the guard is at least the same size as the base of the blade. And then the rest is pretty much the same. I'm just going to copy paste it here. It's pretty much a copy of the build mesh on the blade, with, you know, different vertices and different indices. But it's basically a box, a big glorified box, if you will. Let's see if we run this. We get guards, and you can see it's always at least the same size as the base of the blade, and you know, then there's generation. I actually like the white color better than the yellow that I used on the original project, so I'm gonna stick with this one. Or I might put the handle, I'll put the handle yellow and leave the guards white. It looks cool. There's a good contrast there. So the final one that we need is to duplicate this one and call this handle, clear the script, add a new script, sort handle. Let's go copy all of this. You know what? Yeah, I thought I made a mistake, but I didn't. So let's, I'm just gonna copy pretty much everything, because by now you've already seen how this works. So our handle is going to be, it's going to have a width and a height basically, and the parameters that it accepts are the guard depth, because I need to know where to start drawing down on the y-axis from the base of the guard. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And then I want to know where I want to start, and the guard depth as well. Actually, do I need this? Trying to think why I needed this start y here, but let's add it in. Let's add this in here first. So handle and sort handle. And this one is going to accept minus guards.age. This is where it's going to start drawing, and it is also going to receive the guard.depth. Oh yes, this is because I also want the handle not to be larger than the guard. So it would be a bit weird to have the top of the handle coming off of the base of the guard. So I pass in these two parameters to prevent that from happening. And then the rest is pretty much, you know, randomization. This is where I set up the width to be at least the size of the guard. And then it's pretty much vertices and indices as usual. And I just want to go and change the material on the handle itself to be this flat shading kind of material. If I can find this, yes, this flat shading kind of material. And is this the correct one? I think it is. And if we do execute this now, we should have a full sort. So, and now we can generate multiple instances of this thing. And some of them look pretty cool, I think. Some of them are like Roman style, others are like, some are really weird. Like this thing looks like something you could hit someone in the head with for being so white, or like a cricket bat or something like that. This is pretty weird as well. I wouldn't see a sword like that. I wouldn't like a sword like that. But some are interesting, some are good. These look pretty standard swords. Yeah, so hope you guys liked this tutorial. It was a bit shorter than usual. I think that's a good thing. Yeah, I'll see you next time. Maybe I'll tackle costume editing the endless terrain we generated last time, or we did last time on the last tutorial. That would be an interesting project to be able to, you know, do some costume changes on a procedurally generated terrain. That would be probably interesting. Yeah, leave a note in the description. Don't forget to subscribe if you liked it, and I will see you next time. Cheers.